Okay, so imagine this. The government running on like a system from the 1950s, you know? We're talking paper, a whole mine in Pennsylvania stuffed with 400 million documents just for retirements.
Wow.
It's crazy,
Right.
right? Or, how about this? An online survey that could end up costing close to $1 billion. These aren't like historical anecdotes. This is what we're digging into today on the Journeyman Podcast, episode 53.
I'm ready. Let's dive in.
All right, so we're going deep on this initiative, trying to drag the government, kicking and screaming sometimes, it feels like, into the 21st century.
It's about time.
You shared some really interesting stuff on this, and we want to break it down. What are the biggest takeaways about cutting waste and making the government actually work better? Think of it like we're going behind the scenes, showing you just how big this problem is and the pretty radical plans to fix it.
I like it.
Your sources show there's a real push to ditch these ancient systems and fight fraud head on, and they've got this team with serious private sector experience leading the charge. So we'll look at what they've found, what they're aiming for, and what it all means for how the government actually functions, for us. Oh, and the link to all the original stuff we're talking about is down in the description if you want to go even deeper after we're done. Today, our goal is simple: to make sure you understand what's happening with government efficiency right now, what changes are on the table, and why you should care. We'll hit the most surprising facts and connect them back to the big picture. No one wants to get lost in the weeds, right?
Absolutely. The big picture is key.
Right. So you come away informed, not overwhelmed. And hey, if you're into this kind of deep dive, hit that like button and subscribe to the Journeyman Podcast. It really helps us out.
So where do we start? It seems like the scale of these problems is just, well, huge.
Yeah, it's not about tweaking things here and there. This is like systemic stuff built up over decades.
Like it's baked in.
Exactly. Let's take a really concrete example. You ready for this? The government's retirement process. It's like something out of a history textbook.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So it still relies on a paper-based system from the 1950s.
Seriously?
Seriously. We're talking about a mine in Pennsylvania, 400 million pieces of paper, 22,000 filing cabinets, all for retirement records. It's just mind-boggling.
That is a powerful image of bureaucracy gone wrong.
Right. And the inefficiency is just off the charts. The whole process, because it's all manual, can take 6 to 9 months.
Wow, so you're telling me someone who's worked their whole life for the government has to wait almost a year to actually start their retirement?
That's what we're looking at. And get this, it's so complicated. Federal workers actually need training on how to retire. I mean, come on.
Training to retire. That says it all, doesn't it?
It really does. And they can only process about 8,000 retirements a month. So you can imagine the backlog.
A system completely overwhelmed. So what's the plan? Are they just going to keep using this mine forever?
Thankfully, no. There's this initiative called DOGE, and we'll get into them more in a bit, but they want to completely change this. They're talking about a totally online digital system that would take just a few days. They even called it an Apple Store-like experience for retirement.
From a mine to an Apple Store, and now that's progress.
Talk about a contrast, right? And they're saying this could be rolled out in the next couple of months.
Okay, so that's one very specific example, but it sounds like there are much broader problems with government IT.
You got it. The retirement thing is just one symptom, right? Your sources point to these massive issues across the board with government technology.
Like a canary in a coal mine.
A very expensive canary. Many systems, think Social Security, the IRS, are decades old. Some over 50 years old.
50 years. That's multiple lifetimes in tech years.
Exactly. And imagine the cost to maintain those, the security risks. It's just a mess.
Yeah, I can only imagine the headaches. But beyond just being old, what's the real problem?
Well, a lot of these systems can't even talk to each other.
Seriously?
Yeah. The NIH, they've got something like 700 different systems that are totally incompatible. Imagine trying to get anything done with that.
It's like different departments speaking different languages. So what's the real impact of that? I mean, besides being super inefficient, how does it affect people like me?
Okay, so this is where it gets really important. This lack of communication, what they call interoperability, it's a breeding ground for waste and fraud. Think about it. If the Social Security Administration's data isn't talking to, say, the Small Business Administration, you could have loans going out to people who are dead or even kids who are too young to work.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It is. And it's not just theoretical. We've seen the Social Security website crash because it's so overloaded.
Yeah.
And the data itself is full of errors. Like they have over 15 million people over the age of 120 listed as alive in the system.
15 million. That's more than the population of some countries.
Right. And it gets worse. 40% of the calls the Social Security Administration gets are from suspected fraud centers trying to change direct deposit information.
So not only are the systems old and disconnected, the data itself is unreliable. Talk about a perfect storm for waste and fraud. Which brings us back to this DOGE initiative you mentioned. Who are these guys and what exactly are they doing?
Okay, so DOGE, it's a government team made up of people with a ton of experience in the private sector. And they have this really ambitious goal to cut the federal deficit by $1 trillion.
$1 trillion. That's an enormous number. How are they planning to do that?
Well, their main strategy is to cut overall federal spending by 15%. That'll bring it down from $7 trillion to $6 trillion. They think they can do this by really going after waste and fraud and stopping it in real time. Their daily goal is $4 billion in savings.
$4 billion a day. It's hard to even wrap your head around that.
It is. But some people have criticized them, saying they're moving too fast, not being careful enough. DOGE says, no, they're being deliberate. Their motto is measure twice, cut once.
Makes sense. And they're publishing their findings, right?
Yeah.
Being transparent about what they're doing.
Yep, it's all on their website, doge.gov. They want people to see what they're finding.
That's good. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, as they say. So give me some examples. What kind of waste and fraud have they actually uncovered?
Okay, so remember that online survey we talked about? The one that could cost almost $1 billion? Turns out there are tools out there that could do the same thing for around $10,000.
So $1 billion survey that could be done for $10,000, that's unbelievable.
Right. Then there's the Small Business Administration loans. Over $300 million went to people under 11 years old, and another $300 million to those under 20? I mean, come on.
Loans to kids who haven't even finished high school. That just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. And remember how we talked about the issue of dead people being listed as alive in the Social Security system?
Yeah, the 15 million living centenarians.
Exactly. That's a huge opportunity for fraud, and DOGE is trying to fix that.
Okay, so they've found all these problems, but what are they actually doing to fix them? What's their strategy for the long haul?
Well, a big part of it is about fixing those outdated IT systems so they can actually talk to each other. Improve that interoperability we were talking about.
Right. Break down those silos.
Yep. That would help with delivering services better and preventing fraud because the data would be checked in real time. They also want to apply what they call public company standards to government finances.
Public company standards, what does that mean exactly?
Basically, it means bringing in the kind of financial controls and accountability that you'd see in a publicly traded company. Think things like mandatory payment codes for everything, clear explanations for every expense.
So bringing basic financial transparency and accountability to government makes sense.
Right. And they're also looking at existing contracts, like that $1 billion survey, to find waste. But it's not just about technology and money. They're also looking at the federal workforce itself.
Okay, so they're tackling personnel too. What are they doing there?
They're trying to streamline things, eliminate duplicated roles and overstaffing. They want to do it through voluntary departures, offering things like early retirement and severance packages.
It's like they're trying to optimize the entire system, from the tech to the people.
Exactly. They found things like 40 different communications offices at the Department of Health and Human Services. 40. And get this, 1,400 people at the IRS whose only job is setting up laptops.
Wow, talk about redundancy. It seems like they're really digging into every nook and cranny of government operations.
They even looked at something as basic as government credit cards. They found there were about 4.6 million cards out there.
4.6 million credit cards.
Yeah, for about 2.3 million employees.
So basically 2 cards per employee on average. What were they buying with all those cards?
That's a good question, and one DOGE is trying to answer. They've been working to reduce that number, and they've brought it down to about 2.3 million cards total.
Okay, so big changes all around. But what about social programs like Social Security? A lot of people are probably worried that these efficiency measures could mean cuts to those programs.
That's a really valid concern. But DOGE has been very clear. They want to protect those benefits, not cut them. Their whole thing is about getting rid of fraud and making the system work better.
So fixing the issues that make those programs vulnerable, not taking money away from the people who need them.
Right. They specifically want to address things like the website crashing and the vulnerabilities with direct deposit. They even say that legitimate beneficiaries could end up with more money because of their efforts.
That's reassuring. So they're not looking to hurt anyone. They're trying to fix a broken system.
Exactly. But why are they doing all this? What's driving them?
From what I've read, it seems like a combination of patriotism, concern about the country's financial future. They don't want to see the U.S. go bankrupt, and they're just drawn to the challenge of fixing these huge problems. Plus, they have the support of the current administration, which obviously helps.
So they've got the will and the backing to do this. But I'm guessing it hasn't been easy, right? I mean, changing something as big as the government can't be a walk in the park.
You're right. They've talked about facing pushback, even legal challenges to some of their plans. And they know change in the government is usually slow, but they're also pointing to the progress they've made.
What kind of progress?
Well, they want their website to show government payments in almost real time soon. That would be a huge step for transparency. And remember that retirement system overhaul we talked about? They're still saying that's coming in the next couple months.
So to sum it all up, we've got a government wrestling with these really old systems and just a crazy amount of inefficiency. And DOGE is this bold attempt to fix it, bringing in ideas from the private sector and using technology to modernize everything. It's a huge challenge, from that mountain of paper for retirements to the IT systems that let fraud run wild.
And it's not just about patching things up. It's about addressing the root causes, the systems that can't talk to each other, the lack of basic financial controls. It's really ambitious.
It is. So hopefully this deep dive has given you a better understanding of this whole thing, some food for thought without making your head spin.
It definitely makes you think, right? If this one team can find all this waste and inefficiency, what else is out there? And what could be achieved if this kind of effort was happening across the whole government?
That's the big question, isn't it? What if this kind of focus on efficiency and modernization became the norm? What would that mean for the services we all depend on and for how our tax dollars are spent? This is just the start of a long process, but it's definitely worth paying attention to. If you want to learn more, the link to all the original material is down in the description. And if you're into